see the benefit. See the benefit. If you don't see the benefit, there will be no interest. If there's no interest, there will be no effort. If there's no effort, there will be no result. First and foremost, important thing is to see the benefit.
This is Task, Time, Energy, the Purpose-Filled Productivity Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Miller. Welcome to the show. Welcome, everyone. Our guest today is Geshe Gelek Choda. Geshe Gelek is a Tibetan Buddhist monk and for the last 22 years has been the resident teacher at Kadampa Center in Raleigh, North Carolina, where he is teaching people how to be happier by using their mind. And Geshe Gelek was born in Sikkim, India, and Geshe, at the age of 7, you went to the Sera Je Monastery in southern India and studied there. And then you earned the degree of Geshe Larampa in 1997, and then came here to Kadampa Center a few years later. So thank you very much for being here with us today.
Oh, very happy to be here. Thank you, Scott.
If someone asked, what is Buddhism about? And you just had maybe a couple minutes to explain what Buddhism is about, how would you explain that?
Buddhism is about how to minimize anxiety, fear, stress by thinking. So that is basically Buddhism is about. And like caring the well-being of other sentient beings and to achieve maximum happiness for yourself. So that kind of sums up what Buddhism is about.
I think that's very interesting for people who don't know much about it, is that it is about just improving our minds and helping ourselves be more happy so that we can also take better care of other people. Yeah. And Geshe is an academic title. I've heard it described as like a PhD or a doctorate in Buddhist philosophy. Yes. And I think it's very interesting hearing about the process of earning the degree. Is it correct that you study for 18 to 25 years to earn that degree?
Yes, that's correct. And there are you go to 6-year exam, memorizations, debate, writing, lot of writings, and memorization is part of the education system in the monastery. Need to memorize many hundreds of pages and able to say by heart. So the process takes as you mentioned, 18 to 22 years. That's how long it takes.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting too, because, we have so many students in this country who, study very hard, but then to think that you have to basically memorize large parts of your textbooks, and then be able to recite that back. And you talk about the debates, so I think this is very interesting too, because they're very interesting to watch, where you're debating different ideas in Buddhist philosophy. And is it correct that you have to be able to recall from memory certain lines of texts and use those in the debate? And all the other monks are watching to make sure that you recite them correctly. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's very accurate. So if someone who doesn't have idea of the debate education system back in the monastery. So when you go to visit the monastery, a lot of tourists, they think we monks are practicing Kung Fu. But we are not really practicing Kung Fu, but the debate has require a lot of physical movement to energize. So what is happening, we are not allowed to bring any book at the class. There will be no book. So only way you debate is each class probably has 50 to 100 monks, and everybody studying the same text. They kind of remember the text by heart. So they've been read so many times, and they probably, part of the text they probably memorize. So then one person sit in the middle, so then there's a lot of people stand up. So monks who are standing up, they are the one who's asking the questions. the monks who's sitting in the middle of the line, one who's giving the answer. So we don't like every topic in the subject, we don't like accept very easily. We debate and try to get to the bottom of the meaning. So there's a lot of disagreement. So then, that's how we debate. It says it's like debate, like techniques, like first it takes some time to really get into the debate, because it's like when you burn a big log, the beginning is hard to catch the fire. So debate is like that. Once you catch fire, then it's easy to, put down the fire, because now it's catching whole log's fire. So debate is like that. In the middle, it gets so like, first you see only one monk standing up. So there will be 2 monks, 3 monks, they're pushing back and forth, arguing, I have to say, I have something to say. And they say, no, I have better thing to say. Then they push back and forth, basically try to prove whatever that person, the monk who's answering, and whatever he's saying is like, try to prove that's wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's totally based on the textbook. You can't just say anything that you want. It has to be based on something, otherwise debate will never end. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot in this country, is we have debates that never end. Yeah. And people just say whatever they want. It's very interesting that these are very complex topics that have been taught, the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha and the teachings of other scholars and teachers, over the centuries who taught about this. And so you're debating these very precise ideas and very complicated ideas. And one of the things I find interesting is you're using if I understand correctly, there's a very structured system of logic that you have to follow.
Exactly right.
It's very much like if someone studies logic or philosophy in the West, and you learn about like logical syllogisms and logical arguments. Exactly. It's the same structure.
Yeah, exactly. So then over time you become very good at that certain formula to learn. Once you learn that formula, then you become good debater. Yeah. So when you debate, when you go to the monastery, when you look at when monks are debating, they look very angry, but that's how you're supposed to look physically, but your heart or mind has to be like snow mountain, white. Mm-hmm. And your face should look like serious, like rocky mountains, mm-hmm. uneven, very rough, but the heart needs to be like snow mountain. Mm-hmm. So therefore, nobody really fights. Even though it looks like very much fighting, like practicing Kung Fu, yeah. But it's debating. So, and I think there's something that's also interesting, here when you have meetings and there's a disagreement, sometimes people argue and it looks like maybe sometimes they're angry. The monastery is opposite. You look angry, but you are not angry. Yeah. Your heart is pure, like white. Yeah. Like a snow mountain. So that's how the debate should be done. Good heart, then like a kind of like a serious looking face.
Yeah, it sounds like being a monk is hard work. How many when you went to the Sera Je Monastery? How many monks were there?
Very good question. So when I went to the monastery at that time, they just moved from like a place called Buksa. There's like monks. The senior monk who escaped from Tibet, they are settled in Buksa where Mahatma Gandhi was imprisoned. And when the British is ruling India, occupy India. So after then, the government resettled them to South India because there the weather and all kinds of the people are making sick because of due to the climate change. Tibet is so high up, cold. All of a sudden they come down in a very low level. They get all kinds of sicknesses, lung disease like TB. So they resettled into South India. So I went there, so there's no house. There's like just tent. It's not like, people should not think like tent, like, camping tent. No, it's not like that tent. It's just barely holding up. It's just big piece of fabric and like put in like some kind of columns there. So I lived there 70 years. At that time, there's like altogether 500 monks. Then maybe there's like around like 50 little monks. Mm-hmm. Little monks. So now we have like 5,000, like probably there are like around like 700 little monks in the monastery.
Yeah, I remember, just reading about it. That I guess when you were younger, when you first went there, it was when they were first rebuilding the Sera Je Monastery there in India. Yeah, I didn't know that it was just tense then when you first went there. When we were in the West, if you're a Westerner and you think about monks and going to a monastery, people think of, I think, climbing up a mountain or going through a jungle, and all of a sudden there's this large, beautiful temple, and the monks just sit there and chant and pray all day, but it's hard work. I remember you talking one time, I think you even were growing your own food. I think one time you talked about when you were younger, one of your jobs was to go out at night and protect the corn from the elephants. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's very correct. Like when they resettle in South India, and there's so much to do, all the senior monks, they go to work where the Indian government is building the houses for the monks. So there's like jungles, there's jungles. So monks there need to go there every day, probably 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock, all day long. They clear the jungles, they prepare to build the new house for the monks. The little monks, we just left behind because we are not like, we are just 7, 8, 9, 10, little monks. So, and yeah, work's very hard. Monks in the work, so it's not like you go there all of a sudden there's a beautiful temple. It's kind of hard.
Looking at how much studying that the monks do, you're studying Buddhist philosophy. The monks learn English and Tibetan and Hindi. Chinese. Now today, science, so studying electronics and physics and chemistry. Would you maybe share with people, like, just what would a typical day be like for a monk studying at the monastery?
Every day, so maybe like 5 o'clock in the morning, there's like prayer gatherings that which last like hour and a half. Then after that, so come back to your house. So then you do your memorization. You just memorize the text that you are debating on. You memorize. Then around 9 o'clock, so then you hear the gong. Then that means you go to class. So then you go there. So then like a debate 101. And like you can choose from all kind of like different levels of class. So if you can choose, like Scott is top on his class, so maybe I'll ask Scott to debate with me. So you can do that. So then after that, after maybe few minutes later, like 30 minutes, so then you get together as a class. So then everybody go to Indra class. It's all outside, not in like classroom like here, like with the chair and desk. No. With the meditation cushions, it's outside, like courtyard. So the whole class get together. So then whoever needs to answer, then monks sit in the middle. So then the debate probably lasts like hours. Then after that, there's like another prayer gathering. So that's like prayer is dedicated to remove the obstacles to succeed in your study. So then after that, then again that prayer, after when the prayer finished, so then again there's 101 debate. So that you could leave right away, you could stay there, there's not much rule. So then after that, lunch. So then after lunch, some monks, they read, and a lot of monks, they take nap because they don't get enough sleep. So they take nap. So then after that, then they go to class, to the teachers. There, so the teacher will teach the subject and explains for an hour and 2 hours. So after they come back, so then you also review what you memorize. Morning, you kind of like make sure that you remember by heart, that you repeat a few times, and maybe like read or then need to read different commentaries. So then around 5 o'clock, there will be like dinner. So then after that, finish 30 minutes. So then after that, go to class, another class. Same 101, then class, then prayer, then after 101. Which last one, the class, like you could still hear monks are debating around 11 o'clock, 11:30. So then you come back, so then you go outside, maybe you drink some black tea. Then you go outside, then you recite what you've been memorized today. If you memorize like one page, then you're trying to hold the page in your hand, then go outside, then you try to say by heart. Then you mistake, then you look at, then make sure that you like the memorization is like complete or like no mistake, then remember. So then that's the routine. So then Tuesday there's no class. So then monks get break. Most of the time they sleep.
It's interesting how much of a role repetition plays in learning. And again, this is a tradition that has been in place for thousands of years. I think one of the things that you say a lot that I love is, I didn't just make this up last night.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very valuable for people to hear. But one of the things that when I'm teaching people, I'm teaching prep courses for the law school admission test and trying to get students to understand that you don't always learn something the first time you read it or the first time you hear it, going back, practicing again and repeating something many times until you really understand it. I think that's hard for people now because we have, the apps that give us things, right? We say, hey, Siri, what? And just the phone tells you what you need to know. And we get so much instantly that I think it can be hard for people to appreciate a commitment to repeating something until they understand it, or continuing to do something even when it's hard because you want to achieve that goal. I think that can be hard for people. Do you notice that with people in the West?
Yeah. So very much so, because being here last 22 years. But one thing I can say for sure is like, I still remember many pages, if not 100, close to 100 pages by heart. Mm-hmm. So that requires some effort. Mm-hmm. And in any field, like whether it's like spiritual field, mundane field, study in the college, whatever you're studying, first and foremost important things, what you need is you need interest. But first you need see the benefit. See the benefit. If you don't see the benefit, there will be no interest. If there's no interest, there will be no effort. If there's no effort, there will be no result. First and foremost important thing is to see the benefit. What is the benefit? For me, benefit, whenever I travel, I don't need to bring my books. I remember my prayer by my heart. And I remember that correctly. Remember that. So I don't need to worry about, my page is going to blow by wind, or maybe I'm going to lose. It's all here. Mm-hmm. So wherever I go, it's here. So that's the one temporary benefit. So then, the Indian, like the Nalendra master Shantideva said, like, if you're trying to make familiar with something, there's nothing that does not become familiar. He said, therefore, if you learn how to tolerate small difficulties, and you will learn how to tolerate bigger difficulties. And that's very true.
Yeah, it's something very interesting I've been talking to a few people about recently, is how we view difficulties. Because I think it's very natural for us when something is difficult, or when we feel something that is difficult, we're sad, we're frustrated, we're confused. We think of this as something that we shouldn't be feeling, or this is wrong, rather than just saying, maybe this is just natural, or I can even benefit from this difficulty, from becoming more, like you were saying, becoming used to small difficulties so that we're better capable to deal with larger ones.
So there's another problem, people, like the moment some difficult rise, and people try to blame themselves. I should not feel like that. That's wrong. There's no wisdom there. So that's natural. The human will feel. So as you said it very clearly and very well. So there's something you can learn. The heat is unbearable. I never experienced heat because I always have air conditioned. Maybe you decide to travel to India in June, July. So there's like 45 degrees outside. It's unbearable. Yeah, really. People say if you put the egg on the street, it will cook. So then you look around, then you hire like tricycle, the rickshaw, that's called tricycle. It's not powered by engine. The man is like paddling that. And you look at him like, wow, like you can barely standing up because of the heat. Now look at that. It's not young, it's like middle-aged man. And like carrying the passenger back and forth, like, yeah, humans are capable to handle difficulties, So now when you look at that person, that you say, "Wow, I have nothing to complain." Mm-hmm. So like we are same. Yeah. So then you learn like complaining is not always the best. Learning is the best. So that's what I mean. What I exactly mean. This beginning of this interview, thinking, reduce stress, anxiety, fear. Sometimes we develop so many unnecessary anxiety, fear, stress. So when you think, you just reduce them. So then you become more calm. Mm-hmm. So accepting. Now you're denying the heat that your experience is not going to help. Heat is not going to change. So basically you are making yourself miserable by attached to AC or air conditioning, and meanwhile there's no air conditions. This thought doesn't help.
Yeah. What you were just saying is interesting, talking about these people in India who are out in the heat and they're pedaling the rickshaws, right? The three-wheel carts that people drive in like taxis. And they're out pedaling these things like a bicycle. The thing I thought of immediately is, like you were saying, it can make us grateful, and how useful gratitude is to say, I'm so fortunate I can study here in my air-conditioned house, I can work in my air-conditioned office, I can drive in my air-conditioned car. But something else you were saying that I think is helpful is maybe being inspired by that and recognizing how capable we are as humans of dealing with adversity, of dealing with difficult situations. Look at this person who spends his whole life pedaling this cart out in the heat where you can fry an egg on the street. Yeah. And I think sometimes we think like, oh, that person is so special. I could never be like that. There's just something different about that person, and maybe a little bit, but I know that's one of the things that Buddhism teaches is that we're all capable of developing ourselves. We're all capable of developing our minds. Like you said, there's no use in complaining. Instead, we look at the opportunities to learn.
No, you are very right, because in the West, I'm sorry to say, but I'm not sure how people, how much faith in themselves, how much faith they have in themselves. You hear, and when you come to the West, I never heard when I was in India, oh, I don't like myself, I hate myself. These kind of things, it's kind of like you become like shocked, like, wow, what that means, like you hate yourself, you don't like yourself. So therefore, in Buddhism, there's teaching called Lamrim. It begins with the precious human life. You have to think something positive of yourself. You have to think yourself as something precious. And your life has meaning. Oh, Geshe, my life has no meaning. I said, not true. Your life has meaning. Buddha said, Lama Tsongkhapa said, the many scholars said repeatedly, but you are not getting it. Your life is precious and meaningful, so difficult to find and so easy to lose. So you need to think your life will be better off if you start to think something positive. Something positive. Especially if you are facing difficulties, if you manage to think something positive, you will be much happier. But, getting there is not easy. But no matter what kind of circumstance, if you manage to think something positive, that will benefit. The moment you start to think something negative, you don't get benefit. There's nothing to do with religion. That's just fact. Nothing to religion. No. Unless you don't have mind, so then you're free.
That's one of the great lessons, I think, because many people worry, I think, about what they're doing with their life. Like, am I doing something meaningful? Am I doing something that's going to make me happy? And, the important lesson of our life is precious just by being here, and it has value just by being here. And when we think that way, that, maybe I'm not studying the best thing in school. Maybe I'm not sure of what job I want to do right now, but just being here and being alive is so precious and so valuable. And just by thinking that way, it makes us happier. It has benefit rather than, worrying so much and being so anxious.
Yes, but absolutely right. Not thinking too much is better than thinking too much. Not having opinions is better than having opinions. So having scab,
yeah.
Scab, then you kind of itch. So then you want to scratch, you get some like pleasures, but not having escape is better. So like that, not having too much thought is better than having too much thought, unless they are meaningful.
Unless they're meaningful. I think that's something that we don't always think of, is we have all these thoughts and ideas and opinions, but do we stop and ask, is this helpful? Is this really helping me?
That's exactly in the very beginning I said thinking. That's what it means, thinking. Thinking reduce stress, anxiety, fear. Life will be much better off. Thinking, too much thinking. Particularly in the West, too much thinking. Oh, there are so much problems, this is not going this way, this is not going that way, I don't get job, and you get the job, then everything goes very well. So now you think, maybe there's something wrong. Now that everything's going so well. When everything's not going well, you worry. That makes sense. Now when everything's going so smoothly, you worried, maybe something's going to happen. Yeah. That's called too much thinking. Yeah. Doesn't benefit, too much thinking.
It sounds like at the monastery, one of the things I was going to ask you is doing all this hard work, describing this day where you're spending all this time studying from 5 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, 6 days a week, maybe just Tuesday off. It sounds like just because this is what you're studying every day, this way of thinking, this way of looking at the world and looking at life, maybe that's part of what helps you be able to follow such a tough schedule and to study in such a challenging way. I'm wondering if there's anything else that you found helpful, or that the monks find helpful when they're having to work so hard and having to study so hard.
Scott, you are very kind. You are saying all these wonderful things, very, very kind. But my initial motivations going to monastery is not like that. My initial motivation to going to monastery is to chasing my desire. Mm-hmm. Because I was born in like Sikkim, very remote village. Before me, there's one monk who went to the monastery. So when they come back, he get all the attentions from the village. So it's treated him like special. I say, maybe I could be like that. So maybe I should go to monastery. I'm not just thinking like, I need to get enlightened, I need to get liberations. None of that. I'm just chasing my desire. So then I'm the oldest child from my family. So I begged my parents to send me to the monastery, and of course they are not going to send me. So then I did all kind of things. So it makes them kind of feel like bad. Or then eventually they send me to the monastery. So I really want to ride a train, bus, all this, this thing doesn't exist in my village. The moment I go to the monastery, and next day I miss terribly my family. Now that's like 1,000 miles away. That's like 7-day train journey at that time.
And you're 7 years old?
7 years old. And no relative, no family, just only like few boys that from my hometown. That's the only people I know, and my teacher. Nothing else, no. Unfamiliar land, environment, people, and I cry, and I throw myself on the ground and cry, and doesn't help, too late. So that's the first lesson I learned, chasing desire. That's probably looking for happiness. Yeah. 7 years old.
I think in here in the U.S. we say, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, so I didn't learn that lesson, be careful what I wish for. So I wish something much bigger than I thought I can handle. So that's how I ended up in the monastery. So then, when I become like teenager, 16, 17, still like going back and forth, should I stay, should I go to army, join army, maybe help my families, all kind of thought going back and forth. So then when I reached like 20, then I decided, okay, maybe that's what my mother wants me to continue my study, so that's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. So then, slowly, so then it took a long time. Mm-hmm. Just being in the monastery doesn't guarantee anything.
It seems like there's a good lesson there in just being patient with ourselves.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we look back at the way we were a few years ago, 10 years ago. I sometimes think about things I did in the past and I go, why did I do that? Why was I mean to that person? But then we think, well, that was so long ago. I was a different person, like thinking, hey, I was just 7 years old. And, I was 16 years old. Of course, I was thinking that way. I think that's one thing, too, that's tough for people in the West is we're not always as patient with ourselves, as compassionate for ourselves and as kind to ourselves as we could be.
Yeah, so that's what I always tell at the center, please don't just say the word, to have compassion to myself, loving myself, respecting myself, need to show in actions. The best way to show in actions, like that's actually your moral responsibility to help yourself. If you cannot help yourself, you can help others. It's impossible. So, according to Buddhist teachings, helping yourself is like minimizing disturbing thought. That's the best way to help yourself. Physically, life doesn't get complicated because of how many complications caused by physical body, very limited. How many complications caused by thinking or thought, that's looks like limitless. Mm-hmm. So therefore, it's like mind is your permanent roommate. You can get rid of. So you have no choice. You already have mind. So you can, I'm joking to tell people at the center, here in the West, you have self-storage. If you don't like yourself, you can store in the self-storage with AC and everything. That's that joke. But mind, you can separate. You have to live with your mind. So better to train. And that's the very purpose of meditation, is to reduce or minimize disturbing thought. So then your life will be better. It's not just about religion things. It's very practical, like a mechanism to help yourself. You are fully equipped with that. Some human did it. Why you think you can do? Some human did it. Why you think you can do? You can do. You have to faith in yourself. You have to have faith in yourself. There's something you can do. Then you can say, I love myself. Yeah, now you can say it because you are taking care of yourself.
Well, Geshe, thank you. I think this is all going to be very helpful for people who are living very busy lives, whether they're studying, whether they're working, and feeling maybe a lot of stress and thinking about how to use their minds to relieve some of that stress, to relieve some of that suffering. So thank you for this. I have a question that I always ask people at the end of these interviews, at the end of the podcast. And so I'd like to ask you the same question. What is your dream right now?
What is my dream? My dream, of course, as a Buddhist monk, my dream is like completely everlasting freedom from my disturbing thought. Everlasting freedom from my disturbing thought. That's my dream. Hard dream to reach. Mm-hmm. That's what my dream.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, Scott. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
To learn more about Kadampa Center, the Buddhist center in Raleigh, North Carolina, where Geshe Gelek is the resident teacher, go to kadampa-center.org, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. If you're interested at all in meditation or Buddhist philosophy, they have some wonderful beginners classes. As always, I'd love for you to visit my website, scottmillercoaching.com. Please remember to like, subscribe, or follow our podcast so you can come back and join us for another episode. And in the meantime, have a great week.